Marcus Brennan stood at his kitchen window, coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips, staring at the destruction in his backyard. The hole was enormous, 3 feet deep, maybe 4, carved into the hard Georgia clay like someone had been searching for buried treasure. Dirt was scattered everywhere. His lawn looked like a battlefield, and sitting beside the hole, covered head to tail in red mud, was the dog. Ruger. The pit bull mix stared back at him through the glass with those mismatched eyes, one brown, one cloudy blue. His scarred muzzle lifted slightly, as if waiting for Marcus to understand something. The shelter had warned him. "He's been through hell," the volunteer had said 3 months ago. "Nobody wants him. He's got scars, he's missing part of his ear, and honestly, he's just not pretty." Marcus hadn't cared about pretty. He'd stopped caring about a lot of things after Kandahar. But this was different. This wasn't normal digging. Ruger had never done this before. The hole was too deliberate, too focused. And the dog wasn't playing. He wasn't panting or wagging his tail. He was sitting perfectly still, staring at Marcus with an intensity that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Marcus set down his coffee and walked outside, his bare feet cold against the dew-soaked grass. The morning air smelled like pine and rain. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that only existed in these old subdivisions on the outskirts of Valdosta, where houses sat on full acres and people minded their own business. "Ruger," Marcus said softly. "What did you find, boy?" The dog didn't move, didn't even blink, just stared down into that hole like it held the answers to every question Marcus had stopped asking. Marcus crouched at the edge and looked down. At first, he thought it was a root, something dark and curved, half buried in the clay. But then his eyes adjusted, and his stomach dropped. It wasn't a root. It was fabric. Dirty, rotted fabric wrapped around something solid. Something that had been buried here long before Marcus ever bought this house. Something that wasn't supposed to be found. Marcus pulled his phone from his pocket with shaking hands, his military training kicking in even as his mind reeled. He didn't touch it, didn't move closer. He just stared at the thing in the hole while Ruger sat beside him, silent and still, like a soldier standing guard over the fallen. And then Marcus saw it, the small, pale edge of something poking through the mud. Bone. Human bone. If you're already hooked, don't make the mistake of scrolling away now. Hit that subscribe button, because what Marcus finds next will make you question everything you thought you knew about the quiet neighborhood you live in. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when the police arrive. Marcus Brennan had bought the house 14 months ago with the last of his veterans settlement and a VA loan that barely cleared. It was a foreclosure, cheap, outdated, but standing on a full acre of land that backed up against dense Georgia pines. Nobody around for half a mile in any direction. That's what he'd wanted. Space. Silence. Distance from the noise that lived inside his head. He'd left the Navy after 12 years. For deployments, 3 Bronze Stars, and 1 mission that ended with a child's shoe in his hands and a ringing in his ears that never really stopped. His ex-wife, Jennifer, had tried. God, she tried. But you can't love someone back to life when they've already decided they don't deserve it. The divorce papers came 8 months after he got stateside. He'd signed them without a fight. The house became his fortress. He didn't decorate, didn't invite anyone over, didn't even unpack half the boxes. He worked security at a logistics company 40 minutes away, came home, ate something microwavable, and sat in the dark until sleep finally dragged him under. That was his life, and he'd accepted it. Until the day he stopped at the Lowndes County Animal Shelter to drop off a bag of old blankets his neighbor had asked him to donate. He wasn't planning to go inside. But the volunteer, a gray-haired woman with kind eyes named Doris Whitfield, saw him standing by his truck and waved him over. "You look like a dog person," she'd said with a smile that didn't ask for permission. Marcus had shaken his head. "I'm really not. Come on, just look. Won't cost you a thing to look." He should have said no. Should have climbed back in his truck and driven away. But something about the way she said it, like she already knew he was going to stay, made him follow her inside. The shelter smelled like disinfectant and sadness. Dogs barked from every direction, their voices echoing off the concrete walls. Doris walked him past the kennels, pointing out puppies and labs and a terrier mix that wouldn't stop spinning in circles. And then she stopped in front of the last kennel on the left. "This one's been here 8 months, Doris said quietly. "Nobody wants him. He's not aggressive, not loud. He just doesn't look like what people expect." Marcus looked down. The dog was lying in the corner of the kennel, his head resting on his paws. He was a pit bull mix, broad chest, muscular frame, but his coat was patchy and scarred. Half of his left ear was missing. One eye was cloudy and blind. His muzzle was covered in old scars, the kind that came from fighting or abuse or both. He looked like a warrior who'd lost his last battle. "What happened to him?" Marcus asked. Doris sighed. "We don't know. He was found chained to a fence post outside of Moody Air Force Base. Half-starved, covered in cuts. Animal control brought him here, and we patched him up. But..." She trailed off, glancing at the dog. "People don't adopt dogs that look like him. They want the cute ones. The ones that make them feel good." Marcus stared at the dog, and the dog stared back. And for the first time in months, Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest. "What's his name?" he asked. "We've been calling him Ruger," Doris said. "Because he's tough as a gun and twice as loyal." Marcus crouched down in front of the kennel. Ruger didn't move, didn't bark, didn't beg. He just watched Marcus with that one good eye, calm and steady, like he'd been waiting for him. "Can I take him home today?" Marcus asked. Doris smiled. "I'll get the paperwork." The first week with Ruger was quiet. The dog didn't bark, didn't chew anything, didn't beg for food or attention. He just followed Marcus from room to room, keeping a careful distance, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to exist in the same space. Marcus fed him, walked him, let him sleep on the old couch in the living room. But he didn't push, didn't force affection. He understood what it felt like to need space. And slowly, so slowly, Ruger began to trust him. By the second week, the dog was sleeping at the foot of Marcus's bed. By the third, he was resting his head on Marcus's knee while they sat on the back porch in the evenings. And by the end of the first month, Ruger had become the only living thing Marcus talked to. "You and me," Marcus said one night, scratching behind the dog's good ear. "We're the same, aren't we? Just trying to figure out what we're supposed to do next." Ruger leaned into his hand, eyes half closed, and for a moment, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. But then the digging started. It began small, a hole near the fence line, then another by the back porch. Marcus figured it was normal dog behavior, boredom, instinct, whatever. He filled them in and didn't think much of it. But Ruger kept digging, always in the same area, always near the old oak tree in the far corner of the yard. And every time Marcus filled the hole, Ruger would dig it right back up. "What are you looking for, boy?" Marcus asked one evening, standing over yet another freshly dug hole. Ruger sat beside it, staring down into the dirt, his body tense and alert. Marcus crouched down and sifted through the loose soil with his hands. Nothing, just clay and rocks and roots. He shook his head and stood up, brushing the dirt off his palms. "There's nothing there," he said. But Ruger didn't move. He just kept staring into the hole like he could see something Marcus couldn't. And that's when Marcus started to feel it, the cold, creeping sensation that something was very, very wrong. Marcus tried to ignore it, tried to convince himself it was nothing. But Ruger wouldn't stop. Every morning, Marcus would wake up to find a new hole in the backyard. And every morning, Ruger would be sitting beside it, waiting. It was always the same spot, always near that oak tree. Marcus started watching the dog more closely. Ruger wasn't playing. He wasn't excited or frantic. He was methodical, focused, like he was on a mission. And that scared Marcus more than he wanted to admit. One night, Marcus sat on the back porch with a beer and watched Ruger dig. The dog's paws moved with precision, scraping away layers of clay and dirt, pausing every few seconds to sniff the ground before digging deeper. "What do you know?" Marcus whispered. Ruger stopped, turned his head, stared at Marcus with that one good eye. And Marcus felt it again, that gut-level instinct that had kept him alive in combat zones. The feeling that something was buried here. Something bad. He stood up and walked over to the hole. It was deeper now, maybe 2 feet. Ruger sat back, panting, his eyes locked on Marcus. Marcus knelt down and reached into the hole, his fingers brushing against something solid. Not a root this time. Not a rock. Fabric. He pulled back, heart pounding. Jesus, he whispered. Ruger barked once. Sharp.
Urgent.
Marcus stood up, backing away from the hole. His hands were shaking. His mind was racing. He didn't know what to do. Didn't know who to call. Didn't know if he was losing his mind or if his dog had just uncovered something that was about to change everything. He looked down at Ruger. The dog was still sitting there, calm and patient, like he'd done his job and now it was Marcus's turn. Okay, Marcus said, his voice barely steady. Okay, I'll figure this out. But deep down he already knew. Whatever was buried in his backyard wasn't going to stay hidden much longer. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his phone, debating whether or not to call the police. What would he even say? My dog dug up something in my backyard and I think it might be evidence of a crime? They'd think he was insane. But what if it was real? What if there really was something buried there? He rubbed his face, exhaustion pulling at him. Outside, Ruger was lying on the porch, his head resting on his paws, eyes open and watchful. Marcus grabbed a flashlight and walked outside. The air was cool, the sky full of stars. He approached the hole slowly, shining the light down into the dirt. The fabric was still there, dark, stained, wrapped around something. Marcus's stomach turned. He knelt down and carefully brushed away more dirt, revealing more of the fabric. It looked old, rotted, like it had been buried for years. And then he saw it. A small, pale object poking through the mud. He reached down with shaking hands and touched it. Cold, smooth, unmistakable. Bone. Marcus pulled his hand back like he'd been burned. His breath came in short, shallow gasps. His mind screamed at him to stop, to walk away, to pretend he'd never seen this. But he couldn't, because whoever this was, whoever had been buried in his backyard, they deserved to be found. Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Marcus took a deep breath. My name is Marcus Brennan. I live at 4487 Baytree Road. I think my dog just dug up human remains in my backyard. There was a pause on the other end. Can you repeat that, sir? There's a body, Marcus said, his voice steady now, buried in my yard. And I need someone to come out here right now. Stop right there. If you're not subscribed yet, you're about to miss the moment when the police arrive and Marcus realizes this isn't just a body. It's the beginning of something much darker. Don't let yourself miss it. Hit that subscribe button now, because the next chapter is where everything starts to unravel. The police arrived 30 minutes later. 2 patrol cars, lights flashing, pulling into Marcus's driveway like the whole neighborhood needed to know something had happened. Marcus stood on the front porch, arms crossed, watching as 4 officers climbed out and approached. The lead officer was a woman in her 40s, tall, sharp-eyed, with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her name tag read Sergeant Vanessa Cole. You Marcus Brennan? She asked. Yes, ma'am. You called about human remains? Marcus nodded. In the backyard. My dog dug it up. Cole exchanged a glance with the other officers. Show us. Marcus led them around the side of the house, Ruger falling into step beside him. The dog stayed close, his body tense, his eyes locked on the strangers. That the dog? Cole asked. Yeah. His name's Ruger. He friendly? He's fine, Marcus said. He won't hurt anyone. They reached the backyard, and Marcus pointed to the hole near the oak tree. It's there. Cole approached slowly, pulling a flashlight from her belt. She crouched down and shined the light into the hole, her expression unreadable. After a long moment, she stood up and keyed her radio. Dispatch, this is Sergeant Cole. I need a crime scene unit and the medical examiner at 4487 Baytree Road. We've got a possible 187. Marcus's blood ran cold. 187. Homicide. Cole turned to him. Mr. Brennan, I'm going to need you to step inside while we secure the scene. I didn't do this, Marcus said quickly. I just bought this house 14 months ago. I don't know who. I'm not accusing you of anything, Cole said, her voice calm. But this is now an active crime scene, and I need you to stay out of the way. Understood. Marcus nodded. Understood. He called Ruger, and the two of them walked back to the house, leaving the officers behind. Marcus stood at the kitchen window watching as more vehicles arrived. Unmarked cars, a white van, people in gloves and jackets marked CSI. His quiet life was over, and all because his dog wouldn't stop digging. They questioned him for hours. Sergeant Cole sat across from him at the kitchen table, a notebook open in front of her, while another detective, a younger man named Kyle Pruitt, leaned against the counter, watching. How long have you lived here? Cole asked. 14 months. And before you? It was a foreclosure. I bought it through the bank. I don't know who lived here before. Cole made a note. When did the dog start digging? About a month ago. Maybe less. He kept going back to the same spot. And you didn't think that was strange? Marcus hesitated. I thought it was just dog behavior. I didn't think he was digging up a body. Pruitt spoke up. You got any enemies, Mr. Brennan? Anyone who'd want to set you up? Marcus looked at him, confused. Set me up? For what? Someone buried a body in your yard, Pruitt said. That's a hell of a coincidence. I didn't kill anyone, Marcus said, his voice hard. I was Navy. I did 4 tours. I know what death looks like, and I know when to call the cops. If I'd done this, I wouldn't have reported it. Cole raised a hand, cutting off Pruitt. Nobody's saying you did, but we need to rule you out. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Do you have any idea who might have buried something in your yard? Marcus shook his head. No. I don't know anything. Cole studied him for a long moment, then closed her notebook. All right, we'll need to take a formal statement, but for now you're free to go. Don't leave town. Marcus nodded. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do you know who it is? The body? Cole's expression softened slightly. Not yet, but we will. And when we do, we'll let you know. Marcus didn't sleep. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that pale sliver of bone poking through the dirt. So instead, he sat at his laptop searching. He pulled up the property records for 4487 Baytree Road. The house had been built in 1987. It had changed hands 4 times over the years. Families moving in and out, nothing unusual. But the last owners before the foreclosure caught his attention. Lawrence and Diane Mercer. Purchased 2009. Foreclosed 2023. Marcus typed their names into Google. A few results popped up: social media profiles, a business listing for a landscaping company Lawrence had run. Nothing alarming. But then Marcus found a news article from 2019. Local woman reported missing after family dispute. The article was short. A woman named Natalie Hoffman, age 28, had been reported missing by her family after failing to show up for Thanksgiving dinner. She'd last been seen leaving her apartment in downtown Valdosta. Her car was found abandoned near a gas station off I-75. Police had questioned her ex-boyfriend, a man named Lawrence Mercer, but no charges were ever filed. Marcus stared at the screen, his heart pounding. Lawrence Mercer, the same man who'd owned Marcus's house. He clicked on another link. A follow-up article from 2020. Missing woman's case goes cold. Natalie Hoffman was never found. The case remained open, but investigators had no leads. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. If Lawrence Mercer had buried Natalie in the backyard, that meant... His phone buzzed. A text from Sergeant Cole. We need to talk. Meet me at the station tomorrow morning. 9 Uhr morgens. Marcus set the phone down and looked at Ruger, who was lying on the floor beside him. You found her, Marcus whispered. Didn't you, boy? Ruger lifted his head, his one good eye calm and steady. And Marcus knew, without a doubt, that his dog had just solved a 5-year-old murder. Don't you dare scroll away now. The next chapter is only for people who subscribed, because what happens when Marcus walks into that police station is going to blow your mind. If you haven't hit that button yet, do it now, or you'll regret it when you realize what you missed. Marcus arrived at the Valdosta Police Department at 8:55 a.m. Sergeant Cole was waiting for him in the lobby, her expression grim. "Thanks for coming in," she said. "Follow me." She led him to a small conference room and closed the door. A file folder sat on the table. "We identified the remains," Cole said, sitting down. "It's Natalie Hoffman. Dental records confirmed it this morning." Marcus nodded slowly. "I found an article last night about her going missing and about Lawrence Mercer." Cole raised an eyebrow. "You did your homework. I needed to know who was buried in my yard." Cole opened the folder and slid a photo across the table. It showed a smiling young woman with dark hair and kind eyes. "This is Natalie. She was a teacher, loved her students, had her whole life ahead of her." Marcus stared at the photo. "What happened to her?" "We're still piecing it together," Cole said. "But we brought Lawrence Mercer in for questioning this morning. He lawyered up immediately, but we're getting a warrant for his current residence. If there's any evidence, we'll find it." "What about his wife, Diane?" Cole's expression darkened. "We're looking for her too. She left him in 2022, right before the foreclosure. We haven't been able to locate her yet." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "You think he killed her too?" "I think," Cole said carefully, "that Lawrence Mercer has a lot to answer for, and thanks to your dog, we finally have the evidence to make him." 3 days later, Marcus was sitting on his porch when he saw the news alert on his phone. "Man arrested in connection with 2019 murder of Natalie Hoffman." He clicked on the article. Lawrence Mercer, age 56, had been arrested and charged with second-degree murder. According to the report, investigators had found additional evidence at his current residence, including personal items belonging to Natalie Hoffman that had been reported missing after her disappearance. Mercer's attorney claimed his client was innocent, but the evidence was overwhelming. Marcus set his phone down and looked at Ruger, who was lying beside him on the porch. "You did that," Marcus said quietly. "You brought her home." Ruger's tail thumped once against the wooden planks. Marcus reached down and scratched behind the dog's good ear. "Good boy. You're a damn good boy." The trial didn't take long. Lawrence Mercer pleaded guilty to manslaughter in exchange for a reduced sentence. In his statement to the court, he admitted that he and Natalie had gotten into an argument at his house in November 2019. She'd threatened to go to the police about his history of abuse. He'd panicked, pushed her, and she'd hit her head on the corner of a table. He'd buried her in the backyard that same night, telling himself it was an accident, that he hadn't meant for it to happen. But intent didn't matter. Natalie Hoffman was dead, and her family had spent 5 years not knowing what happened to her. Marcus attended the sentencing. He sat in the back of the courtroom, Ruger at his side, and watched as Natalie's mother, a small, gray-haired woman named Patricia, stood up to give her victim impact statement. "My daughter was stolen from us," Patricia said, her voice breaking. "For 5 years, we didn't know if she was alive or dead. We didn't know if we'd ever see her again. And now we know. And it's because of a dog." She turned and looked at Marcus, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you. Thank you for finding her. Thank you for bringing her home." Marcus nodded, his throat tight. He couldn't speak, couldn't move. All he could do was sit there and hold on to Ruger, the dog nobody wanted. The dog who'd saved a woman's memory and brought justice to a family that had been waiting 5 long years for answers. 2 weeks after the sentencing, Patricia Hoffman came to Marcus's house. She stood on the front porch, holding a small bouquet of flowers, her eyes red-rimmed but steady. "I hope you don't mind," she said. I wanted to see where she was, where he found her." Marcus nodded. "Of course." He led her to the backyard, where the hole had been filled in and the grass was starting to grow back. Patricia knelt down and placed the flowers on the ground, her hands trembling. "She loved dogs," Patricia said softly. When she was little, she used to beg me for one. But we lived in an apartment, and the landlord didn't allow pets. She smiled through her tears. She would have loved Ruger. Marcus crouched down beside her. He's a good dog. He knew something was wrong. He wouldn't stop until I listened. Patricia reached out and touched the ground, her fingers brushing against the dirt. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for giving her back to us. Marcus didn't say anything. He just stayed there beside her, silent and still, while Ruger sat nearby, watching over them both. Life didn't go back to normal. Couldn't. But it did move forward. Marcus kept working, kept living in the house, kept walking Ruger every morning and every evening. The two of them moving through the quiet Georgia pines like soldiers on patrol. But something had changed. Marcus started talking to people again. Started answering his phone when his sister called. Started going to the veteran support group that met at the community center every Thursday night. And he started smiling. Not all the time. Not every day. But enough. Because Ruger had reminded him of something he'd forgotten. That even broken things can still be useful. Still be needed. Still be loved. One evening, Marcus sat on the back porch, a beer in one hand, Ruger's head resting on his knee. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. You saved me, Marcus said quietly. You know that, right? Ruger's tail thumped against the porch. Nobody wanted you, and nobody wanted me, but we found each other, and we figured it out. Marcus scratched behind the dog's ear. We're gonna be all right, boy. You and me. We're gonna be just fine. Ruger closed his eyes, content and calm, and for the first time in years, Marcus believed it. Marcus stood in the backyard, watching as a group of kids ran across the grass, laughing and shouting. It was Patricia Hoffman's granddaughter's birthday party, and she'd asked Marcus if they could hold it at his house. He'd said yes without hesitation. Patricia walked over, carrying a tray of cupcakes, and smiled. Thank you for this. It means the world to us. Marcus nodded. It's good to have people here. Good to hear laughter. Ruger trotted over, his tail wagging, and one of the kids squealed with delight, throwing her arms around the dog's neck. Ruger stood perfectly still, patient and gentle, letting the little girl hug him as tight as she wanted. He's a hero, Patricia said softly. You both are. Marcus watched the dog. The one nobody wanted, the one covered in scars and missing half an ear, and he felt something swell in his chest. Bride. Gratitude. Hope. He's family, Marcus said simply, and that was all that mattered. Because sometimes, the ugliest things in life turn out to be the most beautiful. And sometimes, the ones we rescue end up rescuing us. If the story moved you, if it reminded you that even broken things can still make a difference, then do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Share the story with someone who needs to hear it. Because there are too many people out there who feel forgotten, who feel like they don't matter. And maybe, just maybe, this story will remind them that they do. Thanks for watching. And remember, every life has a purpose. Even the ones nobody else sees.